Hey guys, Chaps here, and this video is pretty different from what I normally do. In December, I got a 3D printer, and ever since, most of my free time has gone towards printing, research, and basically just learning a ton about 3D printing. Being I work on designing jet engines for a living, I found this model, and it instantly caught my eye, and I thought, wow, this would make a great first project for me. So, I'll be doing a little mini-series on my 3D printed jet engine project. Today's video will cover some background as to why I got into 3D printing and what I've been up to recently. Part 2 will cover printing the actual parts and post-processing. Part 3 will go over the assembly process, so feel free to skip there for those of you who are just looking to assemble the printed model. Lastly, Part 4 will show off a bit of the jet engine and go into some more discussion about how a jet engine actually works. I've also got a short assembly guide linked below. There's no narration or anything, it's just a simple assembly guide, so feel free to just watch that if you don't want the tips and tricks and the details of each build. Let's kick things off with 3D printing in general. 3D printing has always fascinated me, ever since I saw a 3D printer at NC State University in 2007. But in November, something clicked for me and I decided to start researching hobby printers for myself. The first step was narrowing down the type of printer. I knew that I wanted a plastic FDM printer, which stands for fuel deposition modeling. Essentially, that just means that a hot end heats up plastic, aka the fuel, pushes it through a nozzle, and deposits it layer by layer as it builds up the model. FDM printers are the most common hobbyist printer, and the prices can vary from a couple $100s to a few $1,000s. In selecting my printer, I considered a few criteria: the price, the reliability, the resolution, the print size, and the reputation in reviews. I really want to stress the reliability and reputation aspect. The last thing I wanted was to get a printer that fails every other print. For my personal needs, the Prusa i3 Mark III was my best option. It's at a slightly higher price point, has pretty standard resolution, and the print size is slightly larger than the other printers I was looking at. It's rated as a very reliable machine though. Not only that, but the support network is massive. Between the Prusa subreddit and Discord channel, I'm always just a few minutes away from getting questions answered. This is incredibly important for a novice who is bound to have a ton of questions. The last perk of this printer is that I could purchase it as a kit, meaning I got to build it myself. This is highly recommended for anyone getting into 3D printing, as it helps you get to know your machine on a much deeper level. It also comes in handy when I inevitably decide to upgrade my machine. After assembling the printer, the next step was to figure out some slicing software. I used the Prusa edition of Slick 3R, or Slicer, which, by the way, you don't need a Prusa printer in order to use the Prusa edition of Slick 3R. I won't go into details here, but basically this is the software that takes your 3D model and slices it layer by layer to determine the path of the printer. That is way oversimplifying things though. There's so many settings to figure out, and I spent a ton of time trying to tweak them and get them just right for myself. The last aspect of setup is some software called OctoPrint. I configured a Raspberry Pi for my printer and plugged it in. Essentially, this now lets me control and monitor my printer from anywhere on my wireless network. With an additional plugin called OctoPrint Anywhere, I can now even access OctoPrint from anywhere on my phone. Combine this with a webcam through OctoPrint, and now I can monitor prints whenever, wherever. This allows me to print overnight or while at work with no worry of failing prints and messing something up. I just check my phone occasionally, and I have peace of mind that everything is fine. And if that's not, fingers crossed, I can always stop the print from my phone. That basically covers what I've gone through to get my printer up and running effectively. But some of you may be asking, Chaps, why did you even get a printer in the first place? Well, as I said before, it's always fascinated me. I like to tinker with things, and this seemed like an interesting hobby to pick up. Not only that, but I've been able to use my printer to create some pretty handy stuff. Obviously, there's cool things like the Tac-Com logo I did, or this engine, but I've also printed phone stands, replacement brackets for the shelving in my closet, and a ton of board game organizers. The material is also relatively cheap, so for the most part, if I can model it, I can print it, and not wait on shipping or trips to the store. Not to mention that Thingiverse has a majority of what you'd want to print. So that's what I've been up to the past couple of months. Hopefully you learned a bit about 3D printing, and check back tomorrow where I'll be posting part 2 of this video detailing the printing of the parts and the preparation for assembly of the jet engine. If you have any questions, you can always reach me on Twitter or in the comments below. As always, if you enjoyed this, be sure to drop it a like, sub if you want, but don't expect too much on the 3D printing front. We'll be back to gears soon, hopefully. Thanks for watching everyone, and I will catch you next time.